Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to our annual Smith in the World Conference. My name is Patricia Woods, and I'm a career advisor in the Lazarus Center for Career Development at Smith. I'm joined today by my colleague, Emily Beaudry, internship coordinator in the Lazarus Center, and also the individual who organized this incredible event. Emily will be helping me today collect some of your questions via the chat feature in Zoom. For a bit of context, the first 12 years of this conference were held on campus. In the fall of 2020, the conference switched to a virtual format, and we were surprised to see a significant increase in audience participation and numbers. And so we decided to continue to offer this conference virtually. And we're so glad you decided to join us for this exceptional program today. The Smith in the World Conference is intended to celebrate and share students' off-campus experiential learning, including internships, community service, research, and study abroad. Students offer reflections on how these experiences have impacted and enriched their academic and professional paths. With that, I'd like to welcome everyone who is here today. We have a diverse group of audience members, including students, families, staff, supervisors, alumni, and community who have all supported our students through internships and community-based learning opportunities. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Today's panel is the first in a series of 4 that make up this month's conference. And today's theme is arts and communication. And for the next 3 Fridays, we will cover topics such as STEM and health professions, US history and social impact, and research and data analysis. Our panelists today will give short presentations about their summer 2021 internships, focusing on art and communication. I'm so honored to introduce our panelists today. First, we will hear from Cameron Finley, who interned in collections management at the Cleveland Museum of Art, followed by Isabelle Stevens, who interned as a theatrical production collaborator / archival intern with the Rhode Island Latino Arts. And finally, we will hear from Lauren Small, publishing intern at Modern Memoirs Incorporated. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. We are recording this panel so that those students who can't join us today will be able to hear from our students. Please keep your microphone on mute. If you would like, viewing in speaker view will allow you to see one presenter at a time. So feel free to adjust your Zoom feature to that setting. And last but not least, we are highly encouraging you to ask questions to our presenters by way of using the chat feature at any time during the presentations. Emily and I will collect your questions and ask them after all 3 presentations have finished. So please write the name of the first panelist before your question so that we know who to address that question to once we get to the question and answer portion of our time today. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to our first panelist, Cameron. Take it away, Cameron.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Cameron Finley, and I will be talking about my experience at the Cleveland Museum of Art last summer. And this is actually an internship that I almost didn't apply to. I didn't think I was qualified for it. The position required in art history major. I'm an anthropology major, though I do art history and museum studies as my minor and concentration. But Smith has encouraged me to pursue things that I, don't think that I can do. I read the statistic that women only apply to jobs they're 100% qualified for, whereas men will apply to jobs they're only 60% qualified for. And I didn't want to be another statistic. So as you can see by this picture, this is me last summer in the art packing room. I did in fact apply and I did receive it. I became the 2021 Warshawski Fellow in Collections Management, and I'm going to tell you about my project. So a few questions before I get started. Why did I choose this internship? This is a joint program with the Summer on the Cuyahoga program, which connects interns all across Cleveland, and we have housing. We are paired with an alumni mentor from our college, and we get to experience the city and get connections in the fields that we're interested in. This also fit my strengths and my interests. It can be difficult to find collections management internships in the museum field, and this just sounded perfect for me. How did Smith prepare me for this opportunity? My coursework has definitely helped me, especially in my interview whenever I was advocating for myself in my anthropology background. I've taken quite a few courses that have really impacted my view of museums and my knowledge of the practice. I've been mentored by so many people, including my two alumni mentors during my program. And I've been supported by everyone I've been in contact here. And so what is collections management? It is the behind the scenes of museums. It's a lot of data entry, organization, collaboration with curators and art handlers, and research. My project was the Loan Exhibition History Project, and this was primarily data entry and research. Some key terms that might be helpful whenever I'm explaining what I'm doing. Athena is the Cleveland Museum of Art's collections management database. A loan is an artwork that is sent to another museum, and object files are fairly self-explanatory. They are files about objects, but they have all the information about every artwork in a museum's collection. Sometimes my slides are a little bit slow to load, so I do apologize for that. But whenever you can see the slide, it will be kind of an overview of my project. Here we go. So the overarching goal of my project was to digitize loan exhibition files, and I did this by combing through the archives and discerning these information from various pieces of paperwork, such as bills, loan agreements, letters, and using this information, I would update our database, either creating new files or adding to existing ones. And whenever all this information was put in, I would research the exhibitions using the library to ensure that they were accurate. I wasn't allowed to take a lot of pictures because a lot of my work was confidential, but here are two that I'm fairly confident I can show you. I have two examples of some archival boxes I was working with, like registrar, import-export files. And then the bottom picture is some exhibition catalogs I was working with. So as you can see, I was working with a lot of different subjects at a time, from folk art in Japan to American portrait drawings. Everything was kind of, I was working with it all at once, and it was really cool to learn more about these art historical periods. Whenever this loads, it is going to be a mock-up of one of the documents that was most helpful to me in my project. It is going to be, here we go. It's a loan request from the trustees. So quarterly, they would review every item that was sent for loan and then recommend it or not recommend it. And this had all the information that I was meant to update into Athena. So dates, borrowers, the objects themselves. And so this was a key portion of my project. This is from the Cleveland Museum of Art's website. I have a link up here. And so if you go to the website, you can go to a piece of artwork, into the collection, and then go to exhibition history. And so every time I would update a file in Athena, every 2 hours, it would then update the CMA's website. So it was both behind the scenes work and public facing work, which was really valuable to me. So this particular artwork was the Still Life with Rayfish by Citin. And so as you can see, I updated its exhibition in 1978. There was a gap, and I was able to fill that using the archives. So there were a few challenges with this project. I had limited files, and the way these files were kept changed over time. My first box was 1994 to 1980, and this was pretty smooth sailing. Everything was in its rightful place. But then from 1980 backwards, it was combining all loan paperwork into one box, stuff that I wasn't interested in or stuff that didn't help me with this project. And so my advisor and I came up with a solution to look at the trustees minutes, object files, and exhibition catalogs for each piece to supplement our lack of boxes. Working backwards in time is also a challenge. You deal with a lot of differences in recording practices. You'll get used to the work of a registrar, how they record things, and then that'll change. And also the completeness of records changes a lot when you're working backwards. Now we have so much more capacity to hold a lot of information because we're primarily working digitally. But whenever you had to keep papers in boxes, you have a very limited storage capacity. And one of the main challenges actually was the changing information about the loans and exhibitions themselves. So these are large exhibitions that are planned quite far in advance, usually at least 8 months, but this can be 1 or 2 years in the future. So a lot of dates change, titles change, objects can be approved and then unapproved. And so making sure that the information I was putting in is accurate and not just a snapshot of what I had access to was really important. So why do this project? This makes the history of every piece of art in the collection more complete. This can aid researchers and visitors who are interested in a particular piece. They can go on the website and see when it was exhibited and to where, and what kinds of exhibitions it was a part of. This is also an exercise in accessibility. This digitizes physical archival files that my department and myself had pretty much exclusive access to and making them public on the website. And this ensures accuracy in Athena itself. So if a curator or a member of the collections management team is interested in a piece of artwork, they can look and see when it was last exhibited to see if it's appropriate to loan in the future, etc. So this is a screenshot from Athena. And as you can see, there's this huge gap in this piece of art from whenever it was exhibited in 1937 to 1982. And this is kind of a red flag. Usually museums don't like having objects sit in their collections for that long, unless they're really sensitive to light or to the environment. So this is kind of an indicator that there is information that just hasn't been updated yet. I also had the opportunity to do a lot of other collections work. I'm not going to list all of these, you can see it, but the ones that were most interesting to me was I was able to compile and organize condition report notebooks for the Private Lives, Home and Family in the Art of Linen Bee exhibition, which opened last summer. And I attended a lot of truck unloadings, art installations, and de-installations, which gave me a really in-depth behind the scenes view of how museums function. So in conclusion, my experience over the summer was mainly focused on making files and information that few people have access to accessible. It synthesized the behind the scenes and public facing work of collections management. And it gave me a really valuable hands-on experience, especially during this time when hands-on experience can be rare. I was the only intern who was able to be on site 5 days a week. And I really think that made my experience that much more valuable to me. It solidified my path to want to pursue a degree in library science after graduation from Smith and to become a museum registrar. This is another picture of me at the museum. So thank you so much. I wanted to say thank you to the collections management department at the Cleveland Museum of Art, especially my supervisor, Gretchen Miller, Lee Borshelsky, who provided the funding for this internship, Marjorie Roth, my concentration advisor, Jessica Nickel, Emily Beaudry, and Patricia Woods at the Lazarus Center, and everybody who has helped me get to this point in my Smith career. If you have any questions, you can contact me at my email. Partnerships with the Caribou House and Kelvin Smith Library, Metro Health, and the Borshelsky Fellowships will be offered this summer through the Summer on the Cuyahoga program. And if you want to learn more about that, you can attend the information session on February 10th at 12:15 in the campus center. Related to that, I will also be speaking at the Library and Arts virtual information session for the SITC program on February 23rd at 12:15. And if you're interested, you can register on Handshake. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cameron. That was wonderful. Next, we will hear from Isabelle Stevens.
Thank you. Zoom's not my friend, so let's see if I can share my screen. Sorry.
Take your time. We are all friends here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. So hello, I'm Isabelle Stevens. My presentation is about my internship, which focused on multilingual theater and how it operated in a pandemic. Yeah. I'm a double major in English and theater, and I'm also in the translation concentration, where I concentrate in Farsi and Spanish to English translation. I'm a senior at Smith. I use she, her pronouns, and I knew, from the start of trying to plan my summer that I wanted to do something with theater, specifically multilingual theater. And it led me into a very busy summer where I undertook a couple different activities, participated in a few things, but this internship was a main point of passion, I guess, for me this whole summer. So I'm going to take you into some of the projects I worked on. So I'm from Rhode Island, and I knew that I wanted to do something in Rhode Island, especially because as a concentrator, I had access to Praxis funds and Praxis Plus funds, which is basically a second summer of funding through Smith. So I wanted to take advantage of that and work in a nonprofit and have the opportunity to do work I was actually very passionate about and could draw from and incorporate into the rest of my life, take inspiration from. So I looked high and low, trying to find multilingual theater companies in Rhode Island. And I knew I wanted to focus on Spanish because I think accessibility in theater is something that's not always the best. And I think COVID has heightened the gap between finding multilingual theater sources. Yeah. So I searched, I emailed a lot of places and was like, do you need help? Are you working on any projects? And I came to find Ryla, which every year does a Teatro en el Verano summer program where they translate a work and make it bilingual and accessible to the community and free. And they do this in partnership with Trinity Rep Theater, which is like a big Rhode Island community theater. And I saw that they were doing Don Quixote. And I was like, ah, Don Quixote, Cervantes, my love, especially because my advisor in the concentration, Professor Lazaro, is very, very passionate about Don Quixote. So I knew that I was like, Reyes would really like this, it would be a good thing for us to share and have in common, especially because I hadn't read it myself. So I emailed them and I was like, please let me help you. And they were like, absolutely, you can interview. And I was like, okay. And we met and yeah, it ended up going great. And I started working with them on their bilingual adaptation of Don Quixote in a play form, which is even more of an undertaking. I began helping them with that in May. It was going to be outside. It was going to be in parks all over Rhode Island. But unfortunately, due to COVID concerns and rising cases in Rhode Island, it was canceled. So before we got to start doing, rehearsals, we had to say goodbye to our passion project, but it was okay because we have hopes to bring it back another summer. And I reached out to the people I was going to be working with and was like, I know we can't do Don Quixote, which is so sad, but is there another way that we can make theater accessible in this heightened pandemic, to marginalized groups and voices who don't hear their stories in their tongues? Like, is there a way we can do that? How can I help? And they were like, Isabelle, yes. They do these things called Barrio Tours, which are neighborhoods in Rhode Island that are largely Hispanic or Latine neighborhoods. And they come up with these walking tours that integrate the history and teach the community about the history, which is something often overlooked and underdocumented, which is another one of Ryla's main concerns and priorities is documenting not only Latina and Hispanic art and culture, but also history within Rhode Island and New England. So they were like, Isabelle, we're trying to make a new Barrio Tour on Broad Street in South Providence. Would you be interested in helping us? And I was like, that sounds lovely. Let's do it. How's it going to relate to theater? Because I would really, really like that. And they were like, okay, well, we can talk about this. And so we decided to, and this is the poster I made, we decided to make it not just a walking history tour, but like a living history tour outside. So we hired an actress, Magnolia Perez, who's very talented. And we asked her if she would be comfortable playing Doña Fefa, who is this big Dominican figure in Rhode Island history, who made Broad Street, or, you know, as the community calls it, La Broa. And she helped a lot of Dominican and other Latina immigrants get settled in the US, find work, find housing. Her kids grew up translating legal documents, not just for their parents, but for their community. And she kind of represents that spirit of, you know, everybody's family kind of thing. Let's all help each other get where we need to be. And Magnolia was like, absolutely, let's do it. And yeah, we worked with Magnolia to kind of create not a character so much as like bringing Doña Fefa's voice back to life, because she has unfortunately passed. But in addition to that, we were like, okay, this is great. A walking, living history tour, very unique, very fun. How can we give opportunities to the community to participate? And how can we kind of add to the cultural significance of Broad Street in doing so? So we put out a call and we hired a bunch of artists who are Afro-Latina and Hispanic and Caribbean within the community to do whatever they wanted. And we worked one-on-one with each artist to kind of come up with dancing and drumming with Jesus, and Katia doing her monologue, slam poetry, and Kufa doing rapping and telling stories about, I think, a chicken, something with it. It was a great story. Yeah, and it was just fantastic. And along the stop, each of these artists made a guest appearance. We did not tell any people on the tour, oh, this is going to happen. So when people started singing and dancing, they were pleasantly surprised, also a little shocked. But I think it really added to the flavor of the whole Broad Street is living. It's not just a history that we're teaching. And you are Broad Street, and we are Broad Street. So I also, though that was the main project I helped with, I had time, and I was like, I know you guys have the first and the only archive, you know, by the community, for the community within Rhode Island that specifically concentrates on Hispanic and Latina history and culture in Rhode Island and New England. Can I help? And they had a graduate student studying museum studies and archival studies at Brown University, doing all of this work, and she was very overwhelmed. And I was like, Alisa, I can help you, let me help you. And she was like, yes, Isabelle, I would love to. So I learned so much through her by documenting all of these sources, reading all of these transcripts, listening to the originals, because the whole basis of this archive is community stories told by the community and for the community. So that was really amazing. It's also online if anyone's interested. In addition to my work with Ryla this summer, I had the privileged opportunity to participate in the New South Young Playwrights Festival with Horizon Theater Company. They're based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and usually it's a one-week fellowship program for playwrights. This year it was on Zoom, but that was okay. I still had a great mentor, Dr. Alicia Griffin, and it was an amazing time. And I wouldn't have found out about it if my teacher didn't send an email to the whole theater department being like, apply if you have a play. And I had written one play in my entire life, and it was, you know, a very short one act, and I was like, I'll apply, and I got in. And not only was my play presented in the festival, but I also was commissioned to write another play specifically for the festival. So that was my summer. And in combination with Ryla, this playwriting festival kind of gave me more direction for what I want my future to be. As Smith, you know, has often challenged me to like branch out of things. I came into Smith only doing acting and directing, and now I'm a playwright who just applied to graduate schools for playwriting. So a big 180. I also, inspired by Ryla and the work on multicultural theater that I was able to do and kind of like, sink my hands into, I applied for Fulbright to teach English in Colombia. And I just found out last week that I made it to the next round. So right now I'm a semifinalist, which is very exciting. But one of the great things about Fulbright is, in addition to teaching, you have the opportunity to do a community-based project. And in case you couldn't tell, I love multilingual and multicultural theater. So my whole proposal was based around integrating language comprehension and acquisition into like a theater-based curriculum. So improv, monologues, anything that could connect people to language in a way that took it off the page and into the streets and into their lives. Yeah, so those are what I have planned for the near future. And in the far future, Ryla really gave me the opportunity to work in kind of like a theater company in the local community theater scene, because I've always had the dream of opening my own multicultural and multilingual theater company that specifically does plays in, any language other than English and puts them on American stages where they're not, traditionally found or given the opportunity to be presented. Even with Ryla, they do bilingual plays, and I'm like, we can push it further. Let's make theater accessible to non-English speakers to the point that like, it's not a special treat once a year, to the point that it's consistent in our lives. So that's a little bit about me. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone on the panel, everybody who's, encouraged me to be here, Professor Lazaro for recommending me for this. And yes, for all of you for your time and attention. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Isabelle. And next, certainly not least, Lauren, feel free to pull up your slides, take a minute to do so.
Right. So, hello everyone. Thank you for coming. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Lauren Small. I'm a senior. I have a self-design major in linguistics and concentration in book studies. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience as a publishing intern at Modern Memoirs, which is a private self-publishing company in Amherst. But before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit about how I got there and how that ended up being a goal for me. So I've been studying book studies since my junior year, and that really got me interested in books as an art form, in addition to my love of language already for the written word. So part of what made this internship so special was that it was an opportunity that I created with Megan St. Marie, who is the president and co-founder of a co-owner of Modern Memoirs. And Praxis funding really made it possible for me. When I met Megan for the first time, I was enrolled in an interdepartmental course called Designing Your Path, Jessica Beck-Call, and we were doing a lot of reflection and future planning. And from the direction my book studies courses were taking me, I was creating design thinking questions and asking myself what I wanted my future to look like and what were the important things I wanted to see there. So these are two of the questions that I came up with. I really wanted to be able to apply my experience in linguistics to the field of publishing and grow my experience with the written word and see what my place in publishing would be. And also just my passion for books and studying them. I really would love to make a career out of that. So I really wanted to find a summer experience in the publishing field, which is very hard to do. So I was very grateful when I met Megan for the first time. She was a guest lecturer in my book studies course, and I reached out to her, and I was just immediately impressed by how much she had done after graduating Smith and her experience with children's literature at the Eric Carle Museum as a professor at Simmons and running a publishing company now. And I was like, if you have a minute to talk to me, I would love to hear about how this happened. And she was very kind to set aside some time in her schedule to meet with me and answer all of my questions. And from our conversation emerged an opportunity for the both of us, for me to learn from someone wonderful and very talented and also for their company to have an intern that was, receiving proper funding during their time there. So to talk a little bit more about Modern Memoirs, it's a private self-publishing company in Amherst. They specialize in memoirs and family history, both assisted and commissioned, but they also do so much more. I had a chance to work with their genealogist of Sonnenberg and also their director of publishing. So I had a wide experience of skill sets that I was not even expecting to receive. So some of my weekly tasks there would look like editing and captioning, mailing and picking up advanced copies of manuscripts, mailing things to clients, attending team meetings. One of the projects that I worked on was filming an anniversary video for their new office. That was a lot of fun for me and outside my comfort zone, so I was really proud of that. But the number one thing I did that I enjoyed was learning and observing, because there was lots of different things to learn and observe. Another project that I worked on was helping to launch the company's monthly e-newsletter, which continues to go out and I still get in my inbox, which I really enjoy. So this is a picture of one of the first ones we sent out. This is my favorite feature, the memory lane stroll. I think it's really essential to the core values of the company, which is that everyone's story deserves to be told, and really connecting to the personal history side of the business. So we have some interactive forms on here so that the clients and friends of the company could respond with their personal experiences. And I just thought it was a really beautiful thing to be a part of. And I also got to learn more about an email design software as I was making this. So I was really pushing and growing as this was going on. Another project that I did that I really enjoyed was writing a blog post. This was great for me, especially someone who thinks of books as art, being able to combine what I had already learned at Smith with what I was learning, having a hands-on experience at a publishing company. That was really great. And Megan and Allie DeGroot both really guided me with this experience. So there's a link to that blog post. So now that that's finished, I'm continuing to do design thinking questions about my future and what I would like it to look like. And some of the questions I have now are, how can I strengthen my skills as a language learner and linguist? How can I bring my background in education to my love of literature? And how can I continue to work and learn with a creative and collaborative team, which was one of my favorite parts of being able to have an in-person internship safely this past summer. So this question so far has led me to Middlebury Language Schools program, which I'll be attending this summer. It's a 7-week intensive program in Portuguese, so I'll be pursuing my language studies there, and I'm really looking forward to that. So that's all I have. Thank you everyone for your time. A special thank you to Patty and Emily Beaudry for having us here, and to Megan St. Marie for taking me on and for joining us today as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, panelists. Incredible. I have so many questions, but I'll start with a privately messaged question to me from the audience, which is to any or all of our panelists. What advice do you have for other Smithies who are starting to look for summer internships? Would anyone like to start us off from our panelists? Cameron.
Yeah, I would say just contacting people, emailing people. I did a ton of that before I got the chance to find out about SOTC. And I think my experience with applying to things that you don't even think that you're qualified for is really important. Like advocating for yourself in internship interviews and in your cover letters, and making a case for yourself to get opportunities.
Isabelle?
Yeah, I definitely would echo everything Cameron said. Any internship I've gotten and worked during my time at Smith has been like self-made. So don't be scared to reach out, but also talk to your professors, because I think they have a lot of friends in high places and a lot of knowledge about opportunities that might go overlooked if you don't ask.
Great, thank you. Our next question is for Lauren. What was your favorite part of working at a local publishing company?
Oh, that's a great question. I think my favorite part had to be getting to know the clients, especially since they specialized in family histories and memoirs. It was really interesting to see how people's histories could tie to where we were locally, and also to get to know stories that I never heard before. Looking at photos and things like that, I think that was kind of like a personal experience that I might not have been able to get if I was working on published at another publishing company.
Thank you. I have a question here that was privately messaged to me. And the question is, was there a time when you had to step out of your comfort zone in your internship? And how did you handle that? Or what did you learn? Cameron, Isabelle, or Lauren, is there a time that you can think of when you had to do that? Sure, Cameron.
Yeah, I was assisting with some conservation work as like part of an experience, and I was asked to give an opinion about where like an object number should go on a physical object. So they put numbers on museum objects to keep track of them in the database. And so I was asked for advice onto where to put it on the object so that it was unobtrusive, but also accessible. And I had never had any experience with that before. I've never done conservation work. And so I made my best educated guess, and my colleague took my advice, and now I have sort of a weird influence on this random piece of art in the collection, and I think that's really cool.
Great. Anyone else, Isabelle or Lauren? Sure, Isabelle.
I was asked when planning, the whole walking tour, to take on more of a stage managerial kind of vibe position. And I didn't really have much experience with it. I did some stage management through Smith, but we work on a team. There's a lot of people who can answer any question you have. And this was the first time where I had to come up with a budget, write a proposal, make sure everybody knew everything, communicate between everybody. So it was really, there was a little bit of a learning curve, but I feel like my time at Smith and my experience at Smith prepared me and gave me like a lot of valuable resources to use. So.
Great. Our next question is that you all created such wonderful opportunities for your internships. What 3 things would you share with others to help them as they search for opportunities? Or maybe even one thing. Sounds like apply to a lot of positions. Go ahead, Isabelle.
I think, don't be scared to apply to things you want to do, even if there's not necessarily a position. Making sure that it's something you're going to enjoy working on, especially if you have access to praxis, which kind of takes away that worry of having to work for funds. Just apply for something you want to do or make it happen. Yeah.
Kind of to echo what Isabelle just said, I would say don't be afraid to ask for help in getting the opportunities you'd like. And don't be afraid to play an active role in shaping the kind of opportunity that you're participating in, because most of the time people you're working with would also love your input in creating the best experience they can for you. So that was something I learned, definitely.
Well, I think We've answered everyone's questions. And if all of a sudden you think of a question, I'd be happy to get it to our panelists and email you back. I can put my email in the chat. You can email me at pwoods@smith.edu so I can get your question to the appropriate panelist. I'd like to thank our 3 incredible panelists today. I certainly learned a great deal and feel really inspired. This concludes our first Smith in the World panel. We look forward to seeing you in the upcoming panels this month. And take care, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today.